Okay, go ahead and label the top writing expressions. It is Unit 2, Notes 2. All right, we kind of already went over this a few weeks ago, finding key words and phrases inside sentences or word problems so that you know whether you're adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing. All right, so I'm just quickly going to fill this out since we've already filled this out before. Make sure you write these down with me. So some more than increased by total plus all together. These are all examples of addition keywords, and there are also more that we didn't list here. For subtraction, we have difference, less than, decreased by. We have subtracted from. Sorry, it's kind of sloppy. I'm just going pretty quick. Minus. And then this one, which kind of is a longer phrase, and it has to go together, like, so how much more or how many more? And then something would follow that, right? Dot, dot, dot. So how many more apples did Chris have than Todd? Or how many less apples did Chris have than Todd? Sentences like that, okay? Go ahead and put a star by subtracted from and less than. And we're gonna go over that in a minute here. All right, multiplication words, we have times, product, twice, things like double, triple, and so on, quadruple, dot, 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 dot. And then a big one that we've been seeing lately is of and per. And finally, division. Obviously, if you see words like divided by or divide, right? So I'll go ahead and write that one down. Divided by. Then we also have quotient. If you see half or a third or a fourth or a fifth, dot, 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 any fractions. Remember, fractions are division problems. If you see separate or equal, like equal parts, or if you see split or split among. And then another one I want you to squeeze in there is each. But remember, each, depending on the question, can also go multiplication. And per, depending on the question, can also go to with division. So go ahead and put those arrows just to know that. Okay, so the reason we put those stars up there, and go ahead and pause if you need more time. But we put those stars by less than and subtracted from, because that means that you have to flip the order of the numbers that they give you. And we'll see what that means in a second here. So make sure you fill these in. So these two phrases are special. Less than and subtracted from. We have an example right here in number 1. It says 18 less than a number. Okay, I'm going to underline my keywords and I want you to do the same. And anything that we can make a number, make a number. Anything that we can abbreviate with a letter or what we call a variable, do that also. So we have 18, I'm going to write it out, less than a number. We don't know what number they're talking about, so we're just going to call it n. Okay? Now, less than means subtraction, so I'm going to fill that in up there. However, this does not mean 18 minus n. Less than is special. See how it says up here, reverse the order? So instead of 18 minus n, it's going to be n minus 18. That's because we're starting with that number n, and we're taking 18 less than it. okay? So less than and subtracted from. You have got to flip the order. All right, go ahead and try to do numbers 2 through 4 on your own. Underline the keywords and write your expression. So pause the video here to do that. All right, you should have paused the video, underlined your keywords, and wrote your expressions. So we have here the product of a number and 6. So product means to multiply. We're going to call that number n since we don't know what it is, and 6. So the product of n and 6, that just means to multiply n and 6 together. So you could write it a few different ways. You can write n times 6. Or if you remember me briefly saying that when a letter and a number are written touching each other, that means to multiply. So this is how you'll usually see it, 6n, which means 6 times n. Do not use the multiplication symbol for multiplication. Think for a second, why do I not want you to use x for multiplication right now? Think for a minute. The reason we don't want to use this symbol anymore is because it looks like the letter X. Now that we're dealing with letters and numbers, that gets too confusing. So don't do that. All right, triple a number. Again, n for number. If you want to use a different letter, X is pretty common. I'm using n because number starts with the letter n. Triple. What does it mean to triple something? Well, that means to times it by 3, right? So here we just have 3n or 3 times n. Different ways to write that, right? Multiplication with parentheses. Sorry, announcements came on there and kind of messed with the video. Okay, number 4, a number we'll call n increased by 9. Increased by means to add. So we have n plus 9. Go ahead and flip on over to the back. Okay. I want you to try on your own number 5 and number 8. So 5 and 8 on your own. Actually, and 7. I'm gonna throw a 7 in there. All right, hopefully you paused the video and tried those ones on your own, and now you're just checking your answers. So we have a quotient, 20, and some number. Quotient means to divide. So we have 20 divided by 9. Another way you could write it is, oh, I'm sorry, not 9. N for number. I don't know why I said 9. Okay, another way you can write it is as a fraction, since fractions mean to divide. All right, number 7, spending $5, so here's our number, per day on coffee. Now, this is a great example of what you'll see in a word problem sometimes, right? So in this case, $5, so per definitely means to multiply here, because you have $5 one day, then 5, then 5, then 5. So if we want to figure out the total amount for, let's say, 45 days, you would do 5 times 45. So here, I'm going to let D equal the number of days. And what I did right there is called defining a variable, which we'll talk about later. But I used N for all the other ones. Now I'm going to use D since we're talking about days. So I have 5 times each day. So 5D, or 5 times D. Number 8 was also a little tricky. Our keyword here should have been saving. And then $15 with a coupon. So we're talking about the price of something. So I'm going to use P for price in my expression. This one here, let's say we started with the total price of something that something costs, right? If we're saving $15, what's happening to that total price? We're taking that $15 off the price, right? So that is why we use subtraction. Now down here, we have 2-part expressions. So there's going to be 2 different keywords or phrases and 2 different operations happening here. Let's take a look at number 9 together. One thing to note with these is that a comma separates things. So make sure you are paying attention for that. when you are writing out things that need to be separated, use parentheses. So use parentheses, right, to separate. So let's go ahead and look at, let's do number, we'll start with 12 and then 13. The other ones were actually still just one step. So here we'll do the two step. We have twice a number. Twice means to multiply by 2, right? Some number, we'll use n, plus 4. So we have a lot happening. We have multiplying the number by 2 and adding 4 to it. So first I'm going to start with my 2n, 2 times n, right? And then add 4. Then I'm actually going to backtrack to number 11 right here. So if we have half, and try this one on your own, so pause here. Half of a number, try that one. All right, so half, that means 1 over 2, right? That's 1/2. That should be a 1. Of a number, we'll call n. What does of mean to do? We already know that means to multiply, right? So if we have half of a number, that just means to do 1/2 of n. So 1/2 times n. If you need to write it, oops, with a symbol to help you know it's multiplication, that's fine. All right, go ahead and try number 13, 15, and 16 on your own. So 13, 15, and 16. So pause here and try those. All right, you should have paused your video here so that you can try those ones on your own. Let's go ahead and read number 13. Turn any words to numbers and circle our key words here. So we have 16, we have more than, we have a quotient, some number, and 2. So how do we show 16 more than something? Well, you would add 16, right? We want 16 more than, so I'm adding 16 to something. Now we have to add that to, though, the quotient of a number and 2. So that part's kind of separate, right? The quotient of a number and 2. That would be my division part. Now, normally I would say, okay, put that in parentheses so that they know that we have to do this first, right? And then you can add on that 16. But we know that from PEMDAS, we would do division first anyway. So you really don't need to separate that there. All right, number 15. We have the sum, so we're doing addition, of the square root. So square root of some number, so we have the square root of n and 3. So I already wrote my square root of a number out that looks like this, right? That's the square root of n that they're talking about. They want to find the sum of that and 3. So the sum means to add them together. And finally, number 16, the difference of 6 times a number and 5. Lots of stuff going on here, right? So the difference, we know we're going to use subtraction, and we know we're going to use multiplication here. So we want the difference of, so we have 6 times a number, those two go together, right? So 6 times a number, 6n. And see, that's what's separating this here. So we know that we did 6n together, and that and is separating the 5. And we know that it was talking about subtraction because of the word difference. Now here, I want you to pause the video, and I want you to come up with your own words to go ahead and explain a few of these problems. On your own, go ahead and do 21, 23, and that's good. So pause here, come up with your own. All right, you should have paused and came up with your own for number 21 and 23. I'm just going to give you one example, but you could have something else. So for 21, you could have said the quotient of a number and 2 increased by 20. For number 23, you could have said half of x minus, minus 10. Or you could have said the difference of half of x and 10. Or you could have said 10 subtracted from half of x. So many different ways to say this. Just make sure you're using the right keywords.